This is a story about a rich man who learns an important life lesson, and the lesson is, do not mess with witches. It's a stormy night in the 18th century, and a French prince is having a wild party at the castle.
She'll be his special one.
This shabby-looking beggar woman shows up and asks for shelter. All she can afford as payment is a red rose. The prince mocks the poor woman and laughs at the pathetic offer. But it turns out the joke is on him. Under those dirty clothes is a powerful sorceress in disguise. She proceeds to turn him into a repulsive monster. Her spell includes all the staff and the party guests too. Outside the castle, even the memory of them gets erased. The enchantress leaves them only one hope. Everything can still go back to the way it was, but only when the prince finds himself a girlfriend.
I'll come back!
Now, you may think, hey, that's easy for a rich prince, right? Not really. The witch makes sure to demand that some true love is going on, and both ways.
He fell into despair and lost all hope.
Years go by, and the people in the small village near the castle have no idea about any of this. In fact, they're all too busy gossiping about a young girl named Belle. Is that because she parties too hard or steals church money? Nope.
It's about two lovers in fair Verona.
She likes reading. That's her crime. A crime she can't even commit properly, since what the town calls a library is actually one shelf with like 5 books. While she's on her way to return Romeo and Juliet to that shelf, someone observes her from a distance. That's Gaston. He's the most desired bachelor in town, which says a lot about the town.
It's never gonna happen, ladies.
Completely self-absorbed and arrogant, he's determined to marry a pretty girl to make sure his kids will be good looking. That is why he has his eye on Belle. Despite her disgusting reading habit, weirdo or not, nobody around is prettier than her. LeFou, his loyal sidekick, tries to find a polite way to tell him he's just too dumb for her. But then again, he's too dumb to understand the insult.
It's outrageously attractive, isn't it?
On her way back, Belle manages to escape Gaston's clumsy approach. She gets home and sees her father, Maurice, working on a music box. He's an inventor and an artist, as we can tell by the drawings all over the room. Most of them depict baby Belle and her late mother, but Maurice doesn't like to talk about that.
Back in Paris, I knew a girl like you.
He only says that her mother was a fearless woman just like her, and that the narrow minds of a small town shouldn't bother her. Easier said than done, especially because she never gets to go anywhere, unlike Maurice himself, who's now loading the carriage for a trip to the market, and he'll only be back tomorrow. Belle asks him to bring her a rose. And now it's laundry time, which is not fun today, so you can imagine it. Before washing machines were invented, Belle's all cheerful anyway because she has a book and that's all she needs. She even starts to teach a little girl how to read.
What on earth are you doing?
But the town folks are just not having it, and they throw out all her laundry. That is one more opportunity for Gaston to waste, and he doesn't disappoint us. Instead of actually being on her side, he says she shouldn't be messing with any kids but her own. Belle notices that he pointed at himself too, when talking about her future kids. So he meant the ones they would eventually have together. She is horrified at the thought, and Gaston's charming argument to seduce her is that, in that town, spinsters become beggars very soon. She just cringes and shuts the door in his face.
Me, the wife of that boorish.
The truth is, Belle is totally miserable. Gaston may be the worst option ever, but the other men in town are not too different. She hates that small town and dreams of a different life somewhere else. Meanwhile, her father seems to be lost in the woods. The old man tries to soothe the horse. Don't worry, it's just a little bit of snow. Never mind that we're in the middle of June and this is super weird. To make things worse, a tree gets struck by lightning right in front of them. The horse gets so scared
Go, Philippe, go, go, go!
that they have an accident, and Maurice finds himself surrounded by hungry wolves. He manages to get back on his horse and rides through a creepy frozen gate into the gardens of a huge castle. Now, can you guess who lives here? Maurice obviously can't, because he decides to climb up the stairs and knock. The door opens to let him in, but there's no one behind it. While timidly exploring the front hall, he introduces himself as a traveler seeking shelter from the storm. That might not be such a good idea. He also ignores that some objects in that castle are not only alive, but actually gossiping about him behind his back.
A man of taste.
He was talking about me.
So he gets more and more comfortable in the apparently empty castle. He even decides to help himself to some food. That attitude changes drastically though, when a teacup slides toward him with a smile. Yeah, you heard me, with a smile on its face. Then the teacup politely apologizes for having moved on its own. His mother did tell him it could be scary. Smiling back at the teacup, Maurice says, "Oh, okay, no worries." But before we suspect he's gone mad, he jumps out of the chair in horror and runs away just like any sane person would.
Whoa, whoa, no, wait.
When he's about to cross the gates back into safety, he gets off the horse to pick a rose for Belle. That will not go unpunished, as we can tell by the growling sound above his head, followed by a huge beast landing furiously on its hooves. In the morning, the horse returns home without Maurice. Belle gets so worried she goes looking for him and ends up finding the castle.
Cogsworth, a beautiful girl.
She hears her father coughing and follows the sound upstairs. Maurice is being held prisoner and looks very sick. He also looks scared and urges her to leave at once. The castle's alive and dangerous. And then their little chat is interrupted by the beast himself. He calmly explains that he's keeping Maurice there for life because he stole a flower. Belle says the rose was for her and she's the one who should be locked up, but her father begs her not to do this. Before making a decision, our girl Belle is thinking, well, okay, let's have a look at what we have here. So she asks the beast to step into the light. That's bad news, we know, but Belle is a good daughter. She asks to go into the cell to kiss her dad goodbye. The beast agrees, but he says that once the door shuts, it will not open again.
It's all right.
In tears, Maurice tells her to live her life and forget him. She goes, yeah, right, and then kicks the old man out of the cell and shuts the door. As he is dragged away, Maurice promises to come back for her. Sometime later, Belle is sitting on the floor, probably thinking she shouldn't have wasted her last day of freedom doing the laundry. Then a candlestick walks in and speaks to her, introducing himself as Lumiere. The first thing he does is to open that door we've just been told would never open again. He says the beast was just kidding. She can have a nice room because she's not a prisoner, she's more like a guest who's not allowed to leave the castle or set foot in the Forbidden West Wing. But still, his friend Cogsworth, who's not the bravest clock on the mantle, thinks a bit differently. He clearly prefers to obey their master. But Lumiere is the true genius here, and he knows Belle is their last chance to break the spell. So he takes her to a bedroom where you could fit Belle's entire old house. Not surprisingly for such a talented matchmaker, Lumiere has an affair of his own with Plumette, who comes to clean the dusty room. Belle is introduced to Madame Garderobe, a former opera singer who also transitioned into furniture. She gets excited at a chance to dress up such a pretty girl, but her taste seems to be a little outdated. Back in the village tavern, Gaston is daydreaming about Belle rubbing his stinky feet in a little cabin full of naughty brats.
You know, there are other girls.
LeFou tries his best to cheer him up. Then Maurice storms in saying Belle has been taken by a beast. Everyone laughs at the poor man, but they stop laughing when they see Gaston might be taking it seriously. In the castle, the beast is infuriated to realize that the objects are plotting a not-so-blind date. Cogsworth spills the beans immediately, blaming it all on Lumiere. This is when we meet Mrs. Potts and her son Chip, both part of the tea set. They all try to reason with the beast, pointing out that they're getting less and less human every day. His fears are sadly confirmed when he agrees to knock on her door and invite her to a romantic dinner.
Will you join me for dinner?
He makes a painful error to sound charming, but she declines the invitation very harshly, as you would expect from anyone who just got a life sentence. The beast is infuriated. If she's not dining with him, she's not dining at all. He commands the servants to let her starve, because what better way to win a heart than show some tyrannical traits, right? And the servants no longer observe the same obedience to their master. In fact, they don't take the beast seriously at all, and disrespect his orders all the time. That's pretty much what Mrs. Potts says to Belle just a couple of minutes later. Right before they organize a spectacular dinner party for her. They do manage to cheer her up a little, but as soon as the show is over, she starts asking about the mysterious West Wing. Mrs. Potts is quick to say that it is empty and there's nothing to see there. Obviously, that only makes Belle even more curious, so she decides to go there. After all, what's the beast gonna do? Lock her up? The West Wing looks like a proper horror movie set, and it's clear that no one else has been there for a long time. When Belle's getting closer to the infamous Rose, the beast shows up and throws a major tantrum.
Mademoiselle, what are you doing?
Belle didn't teach herself how to read and write to become a beast sitter, so she's not having it. To everyone's despair, she gets on her horse and runs off. But before getting very far, she's attacked by a pack of wolves. Finally, the beast manages to make the right move and comes to save her. He gets badly injured in the process, and she can't bring herself to leave him there, so she puts him on the horse and turns back. At the same time, but miles away, Maurice is telling Gaston he's sure they are very close to the castle. They have been looking for that place for hours now, and Maurice cannot remember which way anything is.
No, it's...
Fed up with his stories about talking teacups and horrid beasts, Gaston loses his temper and confesses he's only pretending to believe any of that. He's only doing his best to please his future father-in-law. It turns out that his best isn't very good. When Maurice categorically says he'll never have his blessing to marry Belle, Gaston punches him and ties him to a tree. His plan is to leave him there to get eaten by the wolves. Then Belle will have no one else to take care of her and will be forced to marry him. Right now, she's the one taking care of the beast. When he falls asleep, she asks Mrs. Pot why they are so nice to him when they're obviously under some kind of curse that must be his fault. Mrs. Potts tells her that the beast used to be a kind little boy until his mom died, but after that, he fell under his evil father's influence. As they were royalty and all, no one dared to lift a finger and help the boy, so now they all feel guilty as hell. They tell Belle about the curse, skipping only the part where she's the key to break it.
It's not for you to worry about, lamb.
Motherless herself, Belle seems a bit softened by the story and decides to stay, and that's a very good decision. A few days later, the beast goes like, "Oh, so you like reading, do you now?" Then he takes her to an absolutely fantastic library and says she can have it. Belle is over the moon now. But before we call her a book digger or something, there's one more thing. It's not just that he has all those books. He actually read some of them, which means they can talk about the books. And this is exactly what Belle has always wanted. He might not be a human, but hey, he's not Gaston. Given the circumstances, he's more than good enough.
What is it? What's there?
As they grow closer, the beast starts sharing more magic stuff with her, some things that the enchantress had left behind. He shows her a special book that can take you anywhere, and Belle takes this opportunity to know more about her mother. Suddenly, they're in Paris, in the dusty attic where she was born. They find a doctor's mask and realize that Belle's mother got infected with the plague. Maurice had to leave her behind to save Belle, and that's why he never mentions any of this. Speaking of Maurice, what happened to him? Gaston and LeFou are about to find out. As they enter the tavern, the room goes awkwardly silent. They're shocked to see Maurice sitting right there, very much alive. He explains that he was rescued by Agathe, a poor woman from the village. She took care of him until he was well enough to come back and bring Gaston to justice. But once again, he cannot prove anything. No one believes him or the beggar. LeFou is the only other witness.
Well, it's a complicated question.
But he lies to save his buddy. So Gaston declares that Maurice has gone mad, and their only safe option is to lock him up in an asylum. Far from all this drama, Belle is getting ready for a dance with the beast. He had the idea a while earlier, and now he's freaking out about it. Maybe because he's in front of a mirror. The whole thing plays out much better than expected, and they are clearly getting along now. But when he asks her if she could ever be happy by his side, she reminds him that she is still his prisoner, and she also misses her father too much. Conveniently ignoring the first problem, the beast gives her a magic mirror where she can see Maurice, but that totally backfires as she now sees how much trouble her dad is in. The beast has no choice but to let her go. He tells her to take the mirror so she can have something to look back on. The servants are shocked at this decision, but realize this means he loves her. Someone asks the pertinent question of why they're still objects then, and Cogsworth clarifies that she must love him back.
But she might still come back.
Now, Maurice is being shoved into the carriage that will take him to the asylum. His last chance to regain freedom is to give Belle's hand to Gaston, but he refuses to do that. Gaston locks him up and the carriage sets off. But here comes Belle to stop them, and the whole village is gathered there.
My father's not crazy.
She tells everyone that her dad isn't crazy and the beast is real. She pulls out the magic mirror and shows them the proof. Gaston quickly turns this setback into his own favor. He snatches the mirror and shows the town people that this horrid monster living near them is a great danger. Belle tries to protest and says he has a kind soul, but all it accomplishes is that she gets locked up as well. You see, this is a small town where nothing happens, and now you tell these people that they need to kill a monster. This is the very best day of their lives. Maurice, on the other hand, is much more inclined to believe what Belle is saying about the beast.
I could try to pick the lock.
Even if he had a different impression himself, he uses Belle's hairpin to pick the lock and set her free. Lumiere and Cogsworth panic at the sight of the frantic mob approaching the castle. They run to warn their master, but he's too sad to care, so they must take matters into their own hands, so to speak. As the angry villagers invade the castle, the furniture successfully defends it in the best Home Alone style. Everyone gets kicked out except for Agathe, who is quietly climbing the stairs of the West Wing, and Gaston, who's already up there. He fires at the beast right before Belle shows up. When the beast sees that she came back, he's ready to fight back. But now Gaston is also fired up by jealousy and manages to shoot his rival twice. As the beast falls on Belle's feet, Gaston also falls to his death, and the last petal hits the floor. The effect is immediate, starting with Plumette.
It was an honor to serve
the servants lose their human features and abilities one by one. Then, Belle finally tells the Beast she loves him. He can't hear it, but Agatha can. It turns out that she was the sorceress all along, and she's ready to hold up her end of the deal. The fallen petals start to fly up and surround the Beast until he's a man again. Belle looks at his real self for the first time. The poor thing must be so relieved. As the sun rises, the whole castle is restored to its former glory, and everyone who used to be a person is back to their normal self. And this is the end. This was a recap of Disney's Beauty and the Beast, released in 2017, starring Emma Watson and Dan Stevens. So what's your opinion about this story? Did Belle hit the jackpot big time? Or is it a bad case of Stockholm Syndrome? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.